Girl vanishes on trip with Dad Bess. 10 years later.
In a fog-choked cabin on Monhegan Island, Sarah Bennett fights for her life, bound by secrets and a rusty nail her only weapon. Her daughter's been missing for 10 years, alive or dead. A chilling locket holds the truth, but danger lurks in every shadow. Will Sarah uncover the horrifying truth, or become its next victim? This gripping tale is fictional, crafted for education and entertainment. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more heart-pounding stories. Tell us, what would you do to save your family? Stay tuned to find out how far Sarah will go. Part 1. A Secret in the Shadows. The air in the back room of the rusty anchor reeked of stale beer and mildew, a suffocating stench that clung to Sarah Bennett's skin as she strained against the zip ties cutting into her wrists. The metal chair beneath her was cold, its sharp edges biting into her thighs. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, flickering like a dying heartbeat, casting jagged shadows across the grimy walls. Sarah's chest heaved, her breaths ragged through the filthy rag stuffed in her mouth. Her eyes, wide with terror, locked onto the man standing before her. Caleb Walsh, his neck adorned with a coiled rattlesnake tattoo, held a revolver in his calloused hand. The gun's barrel gleamed dully under the weak light. He spun the cylinder with a practiced flick, the metallic click, click, click slicing through the silence like a countdown to doom. "One bullet," Caleb said, his voice low and gravelly, like he'd smoked one too many packs. "For your husband, from your son." Sarah's heart lurched. Her muffled scream clawed at the gag, but no one in this godforsaken dive bar would hear her. Her mind raced, piecing together fragments of the last 24 hours, trying to understand how she'd ended up here, bound and helpless, staring down a loaded gun. Before she could process Caleb's words, the door creaked open, hinges groaning like a warning. A figure stepped into the dim light, and Sarah's breath caught. Ethan, her 20-year-old son, stood there, his bright yellow sneakers glowing like a beacon in the gloom. His face was pale, his dark eyes haunted, brimming with a mix of guilt and resolve. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as Sarah's world tilted. Her son. Her boy. What had he done? What was he about to do? The flickering bulb buzzed overhead, and thin darkness. 24 hours earlier, Sarah Bennett trudged out of Mercy Hospital in Portland, Maine, her sneakers scuffing against the cracked pavement. The night air hit her face, crisp and biting, a sharp contrast to the sterile warmth of the hospital's fluorescent corridors. At 43, she felt closer to 60, her bones aching from an 11-hour shift in the ER. Her nurse's scrubs clung to her skin, damp with sweat, and her dark hair, streaked with gray, was pulled into a messy bun. She glanced at her watch. 11:15 p.m. The bus, as usual, was late. Sarah leaned against a lamppost, her breath fogging in the chilly October night. Portland's downtown was quiet, the streets empty except for the occasional drunk stumbling out of a bar. She closed her eyes, letting her mind drift, but it always wandered to the same place, Monhegan Island, 10 years ago, when her daughter Emily vanished. 8 years old, all blonde curls and giggles, gone without a trace during a family vacation. The memory was a knife, twisting deeper with every passing year. 10 years of searching, praying, hoping. 10 years of watching her husband, James, drown his guilt in whiskey. 10 years of raising Ethan alone, his childhood overshadowed by his sister's absence. The bus screeched to a stop, its brakes whining. Sarah climbed aboard, taking a seat by the window. The glass was cool against her forehead as she stared out at the blurring lights of suburban Portland. Her house, a modest 2-story on a quiet street, was a 20-minute ride away. When she finally stepped off the bus, it was nearly midnight. The neighborhood was dark, the windows of her neighbors' homes like unblinking eyes. Her own house was no different, silent, unlit, a testament to a family fractured. The front door creaked as she pushed it open, the sound echoing in the stillness. Sarah moved through the living room, her steps light from years of navigating hospital wards. She paused at Ethan's door, nudging it open. A sliver of moonlight spilled across his sleeping form, His tall frame curled slightly on his side, just like when he was a kid. At 20, he was no longer her little boy, but the sight of him still tugged at her heart. She resisted the urge to brush his dark hair from his forehead, not wanting to wake him. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, Sarah set her nursing bag on the dresser, unpacking her stethoscope, pins, and ID badge with mechanical precision. The king-size bed, a wedding gift from a wealthy friend 15 years ago, dominated the room, its extravagance out of place in their modest home. James wasn't there, of course, probably at the Rusty Anchor, or some other dive, drowning himself in cheap liquor. She sighed, the weight of her exhaustion settling into her bones like lead. After a quick shower that did little to ease the knots in her shoulders, Sarah slipped into an old t-shirt and sweatpants. She checked her phone, typing a message to James. "Where are you?" "It's late." No response, as expected. It was a ritual, one she couldn't break, even knowing it was pointless. She settled at the small desk in the corner, opened her laptop, and logged into her email. The screen's glow illuminated her tired face as she scrolled through messages from missing persons. Forums most were spam or dead-end tips, but she checked them anyway, every night, for 10 years. One email caught her eye. No subject, no sender name, just a timestamp from an hour ago. Her pulse quickened as she clicked it open. The message was short, chilling. "Want to know the truth about Emily? Check under the bed." Sarah's breath hitched. Her eyes darted to the bed, its dark bulk looming in the dim room. It was ridiculous, wasn't it? Some prank, some sick joke. But her hands trembled as she stood, her nurse's instincts screaming at her to stay calm, to think logically. She grabbed a pair of scissors from her sewing kit and knelt beside the bed, her knees sinking into the worn carpet. The mattress was heavy, but she pushed it aside, revealing the underbed's fabric. Her fingers traced the surface, finding a section where the stitching was uneven, clumsy, like it had been cut and resewn. "What the hell?" she muttered, her voice barely audible in the silent house. Her heart pounded as she snipped the stitches, the scissors' blades glinting in the lamplight. The fabric parted, exposing cotton stuffing. She dug deeper, her fingers brushing something smooth and flat. A small metal box, no bigger than a paperback, lay hidden inside. Sarah pried it open, her breath catching as she pulled out 3 photographs. The first showed James, Ethan, and Emily on a sandy beach, the Monhegan Island lighthouse in the background. James crouched on one knee, his arm around Emily, while Ethan stood stiffly, his 10-year-old face tense. On the back, written in black ink, were coordinates: 43.7651 degrees north, 69.3159 degrees west. The second photo was of a dense forest, the trees gnarled and twisted, with a phone number scrawled on the back, +1 207, followed by 7 digits. The third photo stopped her cold Emily, alone, standing on a rocky cliff, her blonde hair whipping in the wind, her eyes distant. On the back, in James's jagged handwriting, she knew too much. Sarah's hand shook as she clutched the photos, her mind spiraling. Why were these hidden? What did James know? She grabbed her phone, her fingers fumbling as she dialed Detective Laura Hayes, who had worked Emily's case a decade ago. The call went to voicemail. "Laura, it's Sarah Bennett. I found something, photos from Monhegan Island, coordinates, a phone number. Call me back, please." Her voice cracked as she hung up. She opened her laptop again, typing the coordinates into Google Maps. The pin dropped on Monhegan Island, near an abandoned lighthouse on the island's northern tip. Her stomach churned as she compared the beach in the photo to online images of Monhegan shores. They matched perfectly. The phone number was next. Her thumb hovered over the digits, hesitation gripping her. What if this was a trap? But she had to know. She dialed, her heart thundering. The line rang 3 times before a man's voice answered, gruff and wary. "Who's this? How'd you get this number?" Sarah's blood ran cold. She ended the call, her phone slipping from her fingers. The room felt smaller, the shadows darker. She gathered the photos, shoving them into her nursing bag. She needed to get to the police station, now, but as she stood, A creak from downstairs froze her in place. Heavy footsteps climbed the stairs, uneven, familiar. James. The bedroom door swung open, and there he was, James Bennett, once a proud Marine, now a husk of a man. His face was bloated, his eyes bloodshot, the stench of whiskey and cigarettes rolling off him. His military frame had softened, his broad shoulders slumped. "Still up?" he slurred, gesturing at the laptop. "Chasing ghosts again?" Sarah's hand tightened on her bag, the photos burning a hole in her mind. She forced a smile, her voice steady, despite the panic clawing at her chest. "Just catching up on emails, Jim. You're home late." He leaned against the doorframe, his balance unsteady. "Don't start with me, Sarah. I'm not in the mood." His eyes narrowed, flicking to her bag. "What's in there? You look jumpy." "Nothing," she said too quickly, her heart racing. "Just work stuff. I'm heading to bed." James took a step closer, his gaze sharpening. "You're lying. I can always tell." His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "What did you find, Sarah?" She backed away, her hip bumping the desk. "Jim, you're drunk. Let's talk in the morning." Boom. He laughed, a hollow sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "Morning? You think you're getting to morning?" Before she could react, he lunged, grabbing her wrist with bruising force. The bag fell to the floor, the photos spilling out. Time slowed as James bent down, picking up the picture of Emily on the cliff, his face twisted, a mix of rage and something darker fear. "You stupid bitch," he growled, crumpling the photo in his fist. "You couldn't leave it alone, could you?" Sarah's voice trembled, but she held his gaze. "What did you do to her, Jim? What happened to Emily?" He didn't answer. Instead, he yanked her toward the bed, his strength surprising for a man who spent his days in a drunken haze. From the dresser, he grabbed a roll of duct tape, binding her wrists with ruthless efficiency. Sarah struggled, kicking out, but he was too strong. He shoved the corner of a pillowcase into her mouth, muffling her cries. "You're coming with me," he said, his voice cold as ice. "No cops, no Ethan. Just you and me." He dragged her downstairs, her feet stumbling on the steps. The garage door loomed ahead, and Sarah's mind raced. Ethan was still asleep. He wouldn't know she was gone until morning. She thought of the family tracker app on her phone, a relic from the days after Emily's disappearance, still active but rarely used. If Ethan checked it, he might find her. It was a slim hope, but it was all she had. James shoved her into the back seat of their old SUV, the one they rarely used to save gas. The engine roared to life, and the garage door rattled open. As they pulled onto the street, Sarah's eyes darted to the side mirror, catching a glimpse of their house fading into the night. Her husband, the man she'd loved for 20 years, was no longer the broken soldier she'd pitied. He was something else entirely, a predator, and she was his prey. In the darkness, her phone buzzed in her pocket, the vibration faint but unmistakable. James didn't notice, his eyes fixed on the road. Sarah's heart leapt. Ethan. It had to be Ethan. She clung to that thought as the SUV sped toward the unknown, the photo's secrets burning in her mind. Monhegan Island, the lighthouse, Emily. Whatever James was hiding, she would uncover it or die trying. Part 2. Journey to the Truth. The SUV's engine growled as it tore through the pre-dawn streets of Portland, Maine, the city's lights fading into a blur of sodium orange and shadow. Sarah Bennett's wrists burned under the duct tape, the coarse fabric biting into her skin with every jolt of the vehicle. Her mouth, stuffed with a ragged pillowcase, tasted of dust and despair. She lay curled in the back seat, her heart hammering as she stole glances at James, her husband, in the driver's seat. His knuckles gleamed white on the steering wheel, his jaw set in a grim line. The man she'd married 20 years ago was gone, replaced by this stranger whose bloodshot eyes flickered with something dark, something deadly. Sarah's mind churned, replaying the photos she'd found hidden under their bed. James, Ethan, and Emily on Monhegan Island's beach, the coordinates scribbled on the back. A forest scene with a mysterious phone number, and Emily, alone, staring out at the ocean, the words she knew too much scrawled in James's handwriting. The coordinates 43.7651 degrees north, 69.3159 degrees west, pointed to a remote spot near Monhegan's abandoned lighthouse. That's where they were headed, she was sure of it. But why? What had James done to their daughter 10 years ago? And why was he dragging her into this now? The SUV veered onto Route 1, heading north toward Rockland, where ferries ran to Monhegan Island. The dashboard clock glowed, 2:30 a.m. Sarah's phone, tucked in her pocket, had gone silent after that single buzz back in the garage. She clung to the hope that Ethan, her 20-year-old son, had noticed her absence. Their family tracker app, a relic from the days after Emily's disappearance, might be her only lifeline. If Ethan checked it, he'd see her moving out of Portland. If he didn't, she pushed the thought away. Focusing on the present, she had to stay sharp, stay alive. James's phone chirped, shattering the silence. He snatched it up, his voice low and clipped. "Yeah, I've got her. She found the photos. We're heading to the island now." A pause, then a growl. No cops. I'll handle it. Just make sure the boat's ready." He hung up, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror, meeting Sarah's. "Don't look at me like that," he snapped. "You brought this on yourself, digging where you shouldn't." Sarah's muffled cry was barely audible, but her eyes burned with defiance. She tried to speak, the words garbled by the gag. James smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "Save it, you'll see soon enough." His words sent a chill down her spine, colder than the October air seeping through the cracked window. In Portland, Ethan Bennett stood in the break room of Hannaford's supermarket, his yellow sneakers scuffing the linoleum floor. His shift didn't start until 7 a.m., but he'd been unable to sleep after his mother's strange behavior the night before. Her pale face, her trembling hands, the way she dodged his questions about what was wrong, it wasn't like her. When his phone pinged at 2 a.m., showing her moving north on the family tracker app, his gut twisted. She hadn't answered his call. Something was wrong. He dialed a number he'd sworn he'd never use again. Caleb Walsh picked up on the second ring, his voice rough with sleep. "What do you want, kid?" "It's 2 in the damn morning." "It's Mom," Ethan said, his voice tight. "She's moving toward Rockland. I think Dad's got her." "You said you'd handle him, Caleb. I paid you 10 grand to make him disappear. So, do it." Caleb's laugh was low, menacing. "Kid, you're playing with fire. James isn't just some drunk vet. He's got dangerous people backing him. You sure you want to push this?" "I don't care," Ethan shouted, his voice echoing in the empty break room. "He's hurt her before. I saw the bruises last week. If he touches her again, I'll kill him myself." A long pause. Then Caleb's voice softened, edged with something like respect. "All right, Ethan, meet me at the Rockland ferry terminal. Bring whatever cash you've got left. This just got complicated." Ethan grabbed his jacket, his mind racing. He'd met Caleb through a coworker, a guy who knew shady people in Portland's underbelly. Caleb, a disgraced ex-cop turned muscle for hire, had a history with James, something about a deal gone wrong years ago. Ethan didn't trust him, but he didn't have a choice. If James had Mom, time was running out. The ferry to Monhegan Island rocked gently on the pre-dawn waves, its engine humming as it cut through the fog. Sarah, still bound, was shoved into a cramped storage closet below deck, the smell of diesel and salt stinging her nose. James loomed over her, his breath hot with whiskey. "Don't try anything stupid," he warned, slamming the door shut. The lock clicked, trapping her in darkness. Sarah's fingers worked at the duct tape, her nails scraping until they bled. She had to get free, had to find out what James was hiding. The coordinates, the phone number, the words on the photo, they all pointed to Monhegan, to that abandoned lighthouse. Emily had disappeared there 10 years ago, during a family vacation meant to pull them together after James's discharge from the Marines. Instead, it had torn them apart. Sarah had stayed behind, for an ER shift, trusting James to watch the kids. She'd never forgiven herself for that choice. The ferry's horn blared, signaling their approach to the island. Sarah's heart raced as she heard footsteps above, then the door creaked open. James grabbed her arm, yanking her to her feet. "Move," he growled, dragging her onto the deck. The fog was thick, cloaking the island in a ghostly haze. Monhegan's rocky shore loomed ahead, the lighthouse a faint silhouette in the distance. They disembarked, James's grip bruising as he pulled her along a dirt path into the island's interior. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and salt, the only sounds the crunch of gravel underfoot and the distant crash of waves. Sarah's eyes darted around, searching for a way out, but the path was narrow, flanked by dense forest. She stumbled, her sneakers catching on a root, and James jerked her upright, his fingers digging into her arm. "Keep up," he snapped. "We're almost there." "Where?" Sarah managed to mumble through the gag, her voice muffled but fierce. James didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the path. They reached a clearing, and Sarah's breath caught. A dilapidated cabin stood before them, its wooden walls weathered and gray, windows boarded up like closed eyes. The door was secured with a rusted padlock, but James produced a key, his movements swift and practiced. He unlocked it, shoving Sarah inside. The cabin smelled of rot and damp earth, the air thick with dust. Moonlight seeped through cracks in the boards, casting eerie shadows across the room. Sarah's eyes adjusted, and she froze. Hanging on the far wall, glinting faintly, was a small silver locket, Emily's locket, the one she'd worn every day, engraved with a tiny star. Sarah's knees buckled, but James held her up, his grip unyielding. "Like it?" he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Thought you'd appreciate the nostalgia." Sarah's muffled scream tore at the gag. She lunged toward the locket, but James yanked her back, his laugh cold and hollow. "You think this is about Emily? You think she just disappeared?" He leaned in, his breath sour against her face. "She saw something she shouldn't have. I had to protect us, protect the family." Sarah's mind reeled. Protect them? From what? She thought of the phone number, the coordinates, the words on the photo. Was Emily dead, or was there more to this? James's words echoed. She knew too much. What had their 8-year-old daughter seen? James shoved her into a corner, tying her to a rusted pipe with more duct tape. "Stay put," he said, pulling out his phone. He dialed, his voice low. "We're here, the cabin by the lighthouse. She's secure. Get the boat ready for tonight." He hung up, his eyes glinting with something Sarah couldn't read: fear, maybe, or desperation. Back in Rockland, Ethan sprinted toward the ferry terminal, his yellow sneakers pounding the pavement. The fog was thicker here, curling around the streetlights like ghostly fingers. Caleb Walsh leaned against a lamppost, his leather jacket blending into the shadows, the rattlesnake tattoo on his neck barely visible. He smoked a cigarette, the ember glowing as Ethan approached. "You're late," Caleb said, flicking the cigarette away. "Your dad's already on the island. Took the early ferry." Ethan's chest heaved, his breath fogging in the cold. "You knew? Why didn't you stop him?" Caleb's eyes narrowed. "I told you, kid. James has friends, bad ones. I'm not crossing them for 10 grand. You want your mom back? It's gonna cost more." "How much?" Ethan's voice was raw, his hands clenched into fists. Caleb smirked. "Another 10, and you come with me. No cops, no tricks." Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. He'd scraped together the first 10,000 from months of saving his supermarket wages, a desperate plan to rid them of James's abuse. The bruises on his mom's arms, the way she flinched when James raised his voice, it had to end. But another 10,000? He didn't have it. Still, he nodded. "Fine. Just get her out." Caleb clapped a hand on Ethan's shoulder, his grip firm. "Good choice, kid. Let's move." They boarded the next ferry, the fog swallowing the mainland as they headed toward Monhegan. Ethan's phone buzzed, the tracker app showing his mom's location pinned near the lighthouse. His stomach churned. What was James planning? And what did Caleb know that he wasn't saying? Inside the cabin, Sarah worked at the duct tape, her fingers raw and bleeding. The locket on the wall seemed to pulse in the moonlight, a silent accusation. She had to get to it, had to know if it was really Emily's. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on a splintered floorboard near her feet. If she could pry it loose, maybe she could use it to cut the tape. James paced outside, his boots crunching on the gravel. He was on the phone again, his voice tense. "No, I didn't tell her anything. She's got the photos, but she doesn't know what they mean. Just make sure the others don't find out." A pause, then a curse. "I don't care if they're pissed. I paid my debt. Get it done." Sarah's blood ran cold. Debt? Others? Was James involved in something bigger than she'd imagined? She thought of the rumors about Monhegan Island, whispers of smugglers using its remote shores to move drugs in the early 2000s. Was that what Emily had seen? Had James been part of it? She tugged at the floorboard, her nails splitting as it gave way with a groan. The sharp edge was enough to saw through the tape, and after agonizing minutes, her wrists were free. She yanked the gag from her mouth, gasping for air. Her hands trembled as she reached for the locket, unhooking it from the wall. The star engraving was unmistakable, Emily's sound, but inside, instead of a photo, was a tiny scrap of paper with a single word, Boston. Sarah's heart stopped. Boston? Was Emily there, alive? Or was this another of James's cruel games? She clutched the locket, her mind racing. She had to get out, had to find Ethan, had to get to the police. The cabin door slammed open, and James filled the doorway, his silhouette menacing against the foggy dawn. His eyes widened as he saw her freed hands, the locket dangling from her fingers. "You just don't quit, do you?" he roared, lunging for her. Sarah dodged, scrambling toward the back of the cabin. Her foot caught on a loose board, and she fell, the locket skittering across the floor. James grabbed her ankle, dragging her back. "You're not ruining this, Sarah," he snarled. "Not after everything I've done to keep it buried." "Keep what buried?" she screamed, kicking at his hand. "What did you do to Emily?" His face twisted, a mix of rage and guilt. "She saw me with them. The deal, the boat, the cash. She was going to tell. I couldn't let her." Sarah's blood froze. You killed her?" James's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Killed her? Number I let her run. Into the woods. She never came back." Sarah's vision blurred with tears, but before she could speak, a sharp crack echoed outside, a branch snapping underfoot. James froze, his head whipping toward the door. "Who's there?" he barked, pulling a handgun from his jacket. Sarah's heart leapt. "Ethan? The police?" She strained to see through the crack in the boarded window. The fog was thick, but a shadow moved in the trees, swift and silent. Then, a flash of yellow Ethan's sneakers, unmistakable even in the gloom. "Stay here," James growled, stepping outside, his gun raised. The door slammed shut, leaving Sarah alone in the suffocating cabin. Her hands shook as she grabbed the locket, shoving it into her pocket. She had to get out, had to help Ethan, before James did something unthinkable. Outside, the fog swallowed everything, the air heavy with the promise of violence. Sarah's eyes darted to the loose floorboard again. She pried it up, revealing a rusty nail sharp enough to be a weapon. Her breath hitched as she gripped it, her pulse thundering in her ears. A shout broke the silence, followed by the unmistakable sound of a struggle. Sarah's heart pounded as she crept toward the door, the nail clutched tightly in her fist. Whatever was happening out there, she wasn't going down without a fight. The fog pressed against the cabin, and somewhere in its depths, a pair of yellow sneakers moved closer, a beacon in the dark. Part 3. Confrontation in the dark. The fog clung to Monhegan Island like a shroud, swallowing the twisted pines and muffling the crash of waves against the rocky shore. Sarah Bennett crouched inside the dilapidated cabin, her breath shallow, her fingers wrapped tightly around a rusty nail she'd pried from a floorboard. The air was thick with the stench of rot and salt, and her heart pounded as shouts echoed outside. James's voice, sharp and menacing, followed by another, younger, desperate. Ethan. Her son was out there, in the dark, with a man who'd already taken one of her children. Sarah's wrists still stung from the duct tape she'd cut away, and the locket she'd found, Emily's locket, engraved with a tiny star burned in her pocket like a coal. The word Boston scrawled inside it haunted her. Was Emily alive, hidden somewhere in that city? Or was this another of James's cruel lies? The photos she'd found under the bed, James, Ethan, and Emily on the beach, coordinates pointing to this very island, a phone number, and the chilling note she knew too much swirled in her mind, pieces of a puzzle she couldn't yet solve. A sharp crack split the air, a branch snapping, or something worse. Sarah crept to the cabin's door, her sneakers silent on the warped floor. Through a crack in the boarded window, she saw shadows moving in the fog, one of them unmistakable, Ethan's yellow sneakers, glowing like a warning flare. James's voice cut through the haze, low and dangerous. "Show yourself, or I start shooting." Sarah's stomach lurched. She gripped the nail tighter, her pulse roaring in her ears. She had to get out there, had to stop whatever was about to happen. The door creaked as she eased it open, the cold air biting her face. The fog was so thick, she could barely see 10 feet ahead, but she followed the voices, her steps cautious, her breath fogging in the dawn chill. "Dad, let her go." Ethan's voice trembled with rage, closer now. Sarah's heart clenched. He was here for her, but at what cost? She rounded a cluster of gnarled trees and froze. In a small clearing near the abandoned lighthouse, James stood with his handgun raised, its barrel glinting in the faint moonlight. Ethan faced him, his tall frame rigid, a hunting knife clutched in his shaking hand. His yellow sneakers were planted firmly in the dirt, but his eyes were wild, darting between James and the cabin. Behind him, another figure loomed, Caleb Walsh, the man with the rattlesnake tattoo, his own gun drawn but held low, his expression unreadable. "Ethan, drop the knife." James growled, his voice slurred with whiskey, but steady with menace. "You don't want to do this, kid." "Sign." "Don't call me that," Ethan spat, his voice cracking. "You lost the right to call me anything when you hurt Emily. When you hurt Mom." Sarah's breath caught. She stepped forward, the nail raised, but the fog hid her from view. She wanted to scream, to tell Ethan to run, but her throat was dry, her body frozen by the weight of her son's words. Hurt Emily? James had said she'd run into the woods, but Ethan's tone suggested something darker, something worse. James laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed through the trees. "You think you know what happened? You were 10, Ethan. A scared little boy. You don't know shit." "I know enough," Ethan shouted, his knife gleaming as he took a step closer. "I saw you that night. You came back to the hotel without her, drunk, blood on your shirt. You told me to keep my mouth shut, or you'd hurt Mom. I've been carrying that for 10 years. Sarah's knees buckled, but she caught herself against a tree, the bark rough under her palm. Blood on his shirt? Her mind reeled, the photos flashing before her eyes, the coordinates, the phone number, Emily's locket. Had James killed their daughter, or was there more to this nightmare? Caleb stepped forward, his gun still lowered, his voice cutting through the tension. "Enough, both of you. James, you said this was about tying up loose ends. I didn't sign up for a family feud. Bye." James's eyes flicked to Caleb, narrowing. "Stay out of this, Walsh. You're here for the money, so do your job." Sarah's heart sank. Money? Was Caleb here to help James, or Ethan? She remembered Ethan's call to Caleb, overheard in the SUV. "I paid you 10 grand to make him disappear." Had her son hired this man to kill his own father? The thought was a knife to her gut, but she pushed it aside. She had to act, now. "Ethan," she shouted, her voice hoarse as she stumbled into the clearing. All three men turned, their faces stark in the moonlight. James's gun swung toward her, and Ethan's eyes widened with panic. "Mom, get back," Ethan yelled, stepping between her and James, his knife raised. James's face twisted with rage. "You stupid bitch," he snarled at Sarah. "You couldn't just stay put, could you?" Sarah gripped the nail, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Let him go, Jim. Whatever you did to Emily, it's over. I know about the photos, the coordinates, the locket. I know you're hiding something." James's laugh was bitter, his gun unwavering. "You think you've got it all figured out? Emily saw something she shouldn't have. A deal, a boat, some bad people. She was going to ruin everything. I had to make a choice." "A choice?" Sarah's voice broke, tears stinging her eyes. "She was our daughter, 8 years old. What did you do to her?" James's expression faltered, just for a moment, and Sarah saw something flicker in his eyes, guilt, maybe, or shame. I didn't kill her, he said, his voice low. I let her run. Into the woods. She never came back. Liar. Ethan roared, lunging forward with the knife. James sidestepped, grabbing Ethan's wrist and twisting until the knife fell to the ground. Ethan cried out, but James shoved him to his knees, the gun now pressed against his son's temple. Sarah screamed, rushing forward, but Caleb grabbed her arm, his grip firm but not cruel. Don't, he warned, his voice low. You'll get him killed. Let him go, Sarah pleaded, her eyes locked on Ethan's. Her son's face was pale, but his jaw was set, his eyes burning with a hatred she'd never seen before. Ethan, listen to me, she said, her voice trembling. You're not a killer. Don't let him turn you into him. Ethan's eyes softened, but only for a moment. He's been hurting us for years, Mom. You, me, Emily. I saw the bruises on your arms. I heard you crying at night. He doesn't get to walk away from this. James pressed the gun harder against Ethan's head, his voice cold. You think you're some hero, kid? You're nothing, just like your sister. Sarah's heart shattered, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had to keep them talking, by time. Jim, tell me the truth, she said, her voice steady now. What happened to Emily? Why Boston? Why was her locket in that cabin? James's eyes flicked to her, and for a moment, she thought he might answer. But Caleb's voice cut through, sharp and urgent. Enough stalling, James. You owe me. That deal 10 years ago, you screwed me over, left me holding the bag. I want my cut, or I walk. Sarah's mind raced. Deal? Was that what Emily had seen? She remembered the rumors about Monhegan Island smugglers using its remote shores to move drugs, cash, maybe even people. Was James part of that? Had Emily stumbled onto something she shouldn't have? James's laugh was bitter. You want your cut? Fine. But she doesn't leave this island. He gestured at Sarah, his gun still pressed against Ethan's head. Caleb's expression hardened, his gun finally rising, but not toward James. He pointed it at Ethan, his voice cold. Sorry, kid. Your dad's got deeper pockets than you. 10 grand doesn't cover this mess. Sarah's blood ran cold. Ethan had hired Caleb, but James had bought him off. Her son's face crumpled, betrayal and fear warring in his eyes. You bastard, Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. I trusted you. Caleb shrugged, his tattoo gleaming in the moonlight. Trust is expensive, kid. Sarah's mind screamed for a way out. The nail in her hand felt useless, but she clutched it anyway, her eyes darting between James, Caleb, and Ethan. She had to do something, had to save her son. But before she could move, Caleb's voice dropped, his words chilling her to the bone. You want the truth about Emily? He said, his eyes locked on Sarah's. She didn't die. I took her, gave her to them. Sarah's world tilted. Them? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Who? Caleb's smile was grim. The people James worked for. The ones who paid him to keep his mouth shut. Emily saw their boat, their stash. She was a liability, but they didn't want her dead. She was valuable. Sarah's knees gave out, and she sank to the ground, the nails slipping from her fingers. Valuable? Her daughter, her little girl, sold like a commodity? She looked at James, her voice a raw scream. You let them take her? You sold our daughter? James's face twisted, his gun wavering. I had no choice. They would have killed us all, me. You, Ethan. I did what I had to do to protect this family. Protect us? Sarah shouted, tears streaming down her face. You destroyed us. Ethan struggled against James's grip, his voice hoarse. You're a monster. I'll kill you for this. James's gun pressed harder against Ethan's temple, his voice shaking now. Shut up, kid. You don't understand. None of you do. Sarah's eyes darted to Caleb, who was watching the scene with a cold detachment. She saw something in his expression, a flicker of doubt, maybe regret. She seized on it, her voice desperate. Caleb, you don't have to do this. You said you took her. You know where she is. Help us, please. Caleb's jaw tightened, his gun still trained on Ethan. For a moment, She thought he might listen, but then James laughed, a sound that grated like broken glass. You think Walsh is your savior? He's in this as deep as I am. Tell her, Caleb. Tell her what you did to Emily. Caleb's eyes darkened, and he took a step closer, his gun now pointing at James. Don't push me, Bennett. You're the one who left her in the woods. I just cleaned up your mess. Sarah's heart stopped. Left her in the woods? Cleaned up? She clutched the locket in her pocket, the word Boston burning in her mind. Was Emily alive, trapped somewhere in that city, or was this another lie? She needed answers, but the clearing was a powder keg, ready to explode. Ethan moved suddenly, twisting out of James's grip and diving for the knife on the ground. James cursed, swinging his gun toward him, but Sarah was faster. She lunged, the nail raised, aiming for James's arm. The metal grazed his skin, drawing blood, and he roared, backhanding her across the face. She stumbled, pain exploding in her cheek, but she stayed on her feet, her eyes locked on Ethan. Run, she screamed, but Ethan didn't move. He stood, knife in hand, his face a mask of fury. Caleb's voice cut through, sharp and commanding. Nobody moves, or I shoot. His gun swung between James and Ethan, his expression unreadable. Sarah's heart pounded as she realized they were all trapped her. Ethan, James, even Caleb, caught in a web of lies and betrayal. The fog thickened, the lighthouse's silhouette barely visible now. Sarah's eyes darted to the trees, searching for a way out, but the shadow seemed to close in, alive with menace. She thought of the rumors about Monhegan, the stories of ghosts in the woods, of boats that came and went in the night. Was that what Emily had seen? A smuggling operation, a deal gone wrong? Caleb's phone buzzed, breaking the stalemate. He glanced at it, his face hardening. We've got company, he said, his voice low. Your friends, James, they're not happy. James's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing his face. What did you do, Walsh? Caleb's smile was cold. Told them you're a liability. Like Emily was. Before Sarah could process his words, a gunshot rang out, deafening in the quiet clearing. She screamed, her eyes searching for Ethan, but the fog swallowed everything. Blood bloomed on someone's shirt. James? Ethan? She couldn't tell. Her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees, the locket slipping from her pocket and glinting in the dirt. The world spun, the fog pressing in like a living thing. Sarah's hand reached for the locket, her fingers trembling. Somewhere in the chaos, a pair of yellow sneakers moved through the haze, and a voice, Ethan's, called her name. Then darkness closed in, and the last thing she heard was the distant wail of sirens, cutting through the night like a promiser, a warning. Part 4. The Chase. Sarah Bennett's eyes fluttered open to the sterile glow of fluorescent lights, the sharp sting of antiseptic burning her nose. Her shoulder throbbed, a dull fire radiating from where a bullet had grazed her flesh. She lay in a hospital bed, the thin sheets scratchy against her skin, the steady beep of a monitor anchoring her to reality. For a moment, she thought she was back at Mercy Hospital, in Portland, Maine, clocking out after a grueling shift. But the room was smaller, the walls a faded green, and the view through the window showed a foggy coastline. Rockland, not Portland. She was on the mainland, alive, but the memory of Monhegan Island's foggy clearing crashed over her like a tidal wave. Ethan's yellow sneakers. James's gun pressed against her son's temple. Caleb Walsh's chilling words. She didn't die. I took her. The gunshot that had echoed through the trees. Sarah's heart lurched as she sat up, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. Ethan, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Where's my son? A figure stirred in the corner, and Ethan's face came into focus, pale but unharmed. His dark hair was mussed, his eyes red-rimmed, but he was here, safe. Mom, he said, rushing to her side, his yellow sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor. You're awake. I was so scared. Sarah grabbed his hand, her fingers trembling. What happened? Where's your father? Did they? He's alive, Ethan said, his voice tight. Caleb shot him, but the bullet hit his arm. He's in ICU, under guard. The cops got there right after you passed out. Someone must have called them. Sarah's mind raced, piecing together the chaos of the clearing. The locket in her pocket, Emily's locket, with Boston scrawled inside. Caleb's confession that he'd taken her daughter, given her to them. The photos hidden under her bed, the coordinates, the phone number. It all pointed to a truth she could barely grasp. Emily might still be alive, somewhere, trapped in a nightmare James had created. Before she could speak, the door swung open, and Detective Laura Hayes stepped in, her navy blazer rumpled, her blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail, her sharp green eyes softened as they met Sarah's. One. "Mrs. Bennett, good to see you awake," she said, pulling a chair beside the bed. "You've been through hell." "Laura," Sarah said, her voice raw. "Tell me you've got something on Emily. Caleb said she's alive, that he gave her to someone. Please, tell me you're looking for her." Laura's jaw tightened, and she nodded. "We're digging. I got an anonymous email 2 days ago, someone you got. I'm guessing telling me to check Monhegan Island. It led us to you, just in time. We've got James in custody, and we're working on Caleb Walsh, but he slipped away in the fog. He's a ghost, that one." Ethan's fists clenched, his voice low. "Caleb betrayed me. I paid him 10 grand to take out Dad, but he turned on us. He's working with Dad's people." Laura's eyes narrowed, flicking to Ethan. "You paid him, Ethan. That's conspiracy to commit murder. You need to be straight with me, right now." Sarah squeezed Ethan's hand, her voice firm. "He was protecting me, Laura. James was going to kill me. Ethan did what he thought he had to." Laura sighed, scribbling in her notebook. "I'll deal with that later. For now, we've got bigger problems. Those photos you found, the coordinates, they point to a smuggling ring that's been using Monhegan as a drop point for years. Drugs, cash, maybe people. James was involved, and Emily, she saw something she shouldn't have." Sarah's heart pounded, the locket heavy in her pocket. "Boston," she said, pulling it out and handing it to Laura. "This was in the cabin. It's Emily's. There's a note inside that says Boston. What does it mean?" Laura examined the locket, her expression grim. "Could be a lead. Could be a taunt. We're checking it out. I've got a call into the FBI. They've been tracking human trafficking networks out of Boston. If Emily's alive, that's where we'll start." Sarah's chest tightened, hope and fear warring inside her. "Then I'm going back to Monhegan," she said, swinging her legs over the bed despite the pain. "There's more in that cabin. I saw a loose floorboard. Maybe papers, something. I'm not waiting around while my daughter's out there." "Mom, no," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "You're hurt. Let the police handle it." "Ethan, I've waited 10 years, Sarah snapped, her eyes blazing. "I'm not losing her again." Laura held up a hand. "Sarah, you're in no shape to play detective, but I'll make you a deal. Stay here, recover, and I'll send a team to the cabin. If there's anything there, we'll find it." Sarah hesitated, her shoulders screaming in protest. But the fire in her gut wouldn't let her sit still. "Fine," she said, her voice hard. "But I'm not staying long. Emily's out there, and I'm bringing her home." By noon, Sarah was discharged with a sling and a bottle of painkillers she had no intention of taking. Ethan drove her to a motel near the Rockland Ferry Terminal, the fog still clinging to the coast like a bad omen. They'd agreed to wait for Laura's update, but Sarah's mind was already back on Monhegan, in that rotting cabin. The locket, the photos, Caleb's words, they all pointed to a truth she could barely fathom. Emily, alive, somewhere in Boston, caught in a web of criminals her own father had spun. Ethan's phone buzzed as they checked into the motel, a dingy place with peeling wallpaper and a flickering neon sign. He glanced at the screen, his face paling. "It's the tracker app," he said, his voice low. "It's still active. Your phone's showing up on Monhegan, near the lighthouse." Sarah's heart skipped. "My phone? I lost it in the clearing. Someone must have it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Caleb, or one of his guys. They're still out there." Sarah grabbed her jacket, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. "We're going back, now." "Mom, you heard Laura," Ethan said, blocking the door. "The cops are handling it. You'll get yourself killed." Sarah's eyes locked on his, fierce and unyielding. "Ethan, that cabin has answers. I'm not waiting for someone else to find them. Are you with me, or not?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded, his yellow sneakers scuffing the floor. "I'm with you, but we need a plan." They caught the next ferry to Monhegan, the fog thicker now, the sea churning beneath them. Sarah clutched the locket, her thumb tracing the star engraving. Ethan sat beside her, his knife tucked into his jacket, his face set with a determination that scared her. Her boy was no killer, but the rage in his eyes was new, raw, dangerous. The island loomed ahead, its rocky cliffs shrouded in mist. They disembarked and headed straight for the cabin, the path familiar now but no less ominous. The lighthouse stood silent, its cracked windows like empty eyes. Sarah's shoulder ached, but she pushed forward, Ethan at her side, his knife drawn. The cabin door was ajar, creaking in the wind. Sarah's heart pounded as she stepped inside, the smell of rot hitting her like a fist. The locket's note Boston burned in her mind. She knelt by the loose floorboard she'd noticed before, prying it up with trembling fingers. Beneath it was a small metal box, rusted but intact. She opened it, her breath catching. Inside were papers, receipts, handwritten notes, and a faded photograph of a boat docked at Monhegan's harbor, its name barely legible, Nightshade. Ethan peered over her shoulder, his voice low. "What is this?" Sarah flipped through the notes, her eyes scanning the scrawled words. "Shipping manifests," she said, her voice shaking. "Dates, amounts, locations. This one mentions Boston, and, oh my God." She held up a note, her hands trembling. "Girl, blonde, 8 years old, transferred to Boston, July 2015. That's Emily." Ethan's face paled, his knife slipping from his hand. "They took her. Dad sold her." Before Sarah could respond, a shadow moved outside, swift and silent. She shoved the papers into her jacket, her heart racing. "Someone's here," she whispered, pulling Ethan behind a stack of crates. The door creaked wider, and heavy boots thudded on the floorboards. A man's voice, low and gravelly, echoed through the cabin. "They're here somewhere," he said. "Find them." Bennett's orders. Sarah's blood ran cold. Bennett. James, even from his hospital bed, was still pulling strings. She recognized the voice. Mike Sullivan, James's old Marine buddy, a man she'd met at barbecues years ago, his smile always too sharp, his eyes too cold. He'd been at the Rusty Anchor last week, drinking with James, laughing like nothing was wrong. Ethan's hand tightened on her arm, his breath shallow. Sarah gestured to the back window, its boards loose enough to slip through. They moved silently, her shoulders screaming with every motion. The papers crinkled in her jacket, a reminder of the truth they carried. They squeezed through the window, landing in the damp grass outside, the fog swallowing them. But they weren't fast enough. A shout rang out, and flashlights cut through the mist, pinning them in their glare. Mike Sullivan stepped into view, flanked by 2 men in leather jackets, their faces hard. "Going somewhere, Sarah?" Mike called, his voice mocking. "James said you'd be trouble." And Sarah's hand went to the locket, her voice steady despite the fear. "What do you know about Emily, Mike? Where is she?" Mike's laugh was cold, his eyes glinting. "Your girl's long gone, Sarah. She was valuable, too valuable to kill. The boss in Boston paid good money for her." Sarah's knees buckled, but Ethan caught her, his voice a growl. "She's my sister, you bastard. Not some product." Mike shrugged, pulling a gun from his waistband. "Doesn't matter now. You've seen too much, just like she did." Sarah's mind raced. Boston. The smuggling ring. Emily, alive, somewhere in that city. She had to keep Mike talking, buy time. "Who's the boss?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Who did James sell her to?" Mike's smile widened, but before he could answer, a new voice cut through the fog, sharp and commanding. "Drop the gun, Sullivan." Detective Laura Hayes stepped into the clearing, her service weapon raised, 2 uniformed officers at her side. "You're under arrest." Mike's eyes narrowed, but he didn't lower his gun. "You're out of your depth, Hayes. Walk away, or you'll end up like the girl." Sarah's heart stopped. Like the girl? Was Emily dead after all? She clutched the papers tighter, her voice shaking. Laura, they've got records. Emily was sent to Boston. She might still be alive. Laura's eyes flicked to Sarah, then back to Mike. Last chance, Sullivan. Drop it. The standoff stretched, the fog pressing in like a living thing. Sarah's shoulder throbbed, but she held Ethan's hand, her eyes locked on Mike. Then, a new figure emerged from the shadows, her hands bound, her face bruised but defiant. Sarah's breath caught. Claire Dawson, the journalist who'd contacted her years ago about Emily's case, stumbled into the clearing, pushed by one of Mike's men. Sarah, Claire gasped, her voice raw. I found her. Emily. I saw her in a video, in Boston, last year. She's alive. Sarah's world tilted, hope and terror crashing together. Where? She demanded, stepping forward despite Laura's warning glare. Where is she? Claire's eyes met hers, filled with a mix of fear and determination. A warehouse in South Boston. They're using kids, Sarah. Training them, selling them. I was getting close, but they caught me. Mike laughed, his gun still raised. You talk too much, Dawson. That's why you're here. Sarah's mind raced. A warehouse. South Boston. Emily, alive, but trapped in a nightmare. She had to get there, had to save her daughter. But before she could speak, Mike's man shoved Claire forward, and a shot rang out. Sarah screamed, diving for Ethan as chaos erupted. Laura fired. Mike's men returned fire, and the fog swallowed the scene in a haze of gunfire and shouts. When the smoke cleared, Mike was gone, vanished into the woods with his men. Claire lay on the ground, blood pooling beneath her, but her chest rose and fell. She was alive. Laura cursed, radioing for backup. Sarah, Ethan, get to the ferry, now. Sarah grabbed the papers and Ethan's hand, her shoulders screaming as they ran. The fog clung to them, the lighthouse's silhouette fading behind. But as they reached the dock, a new sound stopped them cold, the low rumble of an engine, growing louder. Headlights pierced the mist, and a black van screeched to a stop, blocking their path. Mike Sullivan stepped out, his gun raised, his smile cold. Going somewhere? He said, his voice dripping with menace. Before Sarah could react, his men grabbed her and Ethan, shoving them into the van. The door slammed shut, and the world went dark. Sarah's heart pounded as the van lurched forward, the papers still clutched in her jacket, Emily's locket heavy in her pocket. Mike's voice came through the partition, chilling her to the bone. Boston's waiting, Sarah. You wanted answers? You're about to get them. Part 5, The Final Truth. The air inside the black van was thick with the stench of sweat and rust, the darkness pressing against Sarah Bennett like a physical weight. Her shoulder throbbed, the bullet wound from Monhegan Island a burning reminder of how close she'd come to death. Her wrists, bound again with zip ties, ached as she sat wedged against Claire Dawson, the journalist whose bruised face was barely visible in the dim glow seeping through the van's cracked rear window. Ethan, her 20-year-old son, sat opposite, his yellow sneakers scuffing the metal floor, his eyes blazing with a mix of fear and fury. The van rumbled through the night, its engine a low growl as it carried them from Monhegan Island's foggy shores toward Boston, a city that held the key to Emily, Sarah's daughter, missing for 10 years, now possibly alive in a nightmare of human trafficking. Sarah's fingers brushed the papers stuffed inside her jacket, the smuggling manifests, the note about a blonde 8-year-old girl, transferred to Boston, the faded photo of the nightshade boat. Emily's locket, engraved with a tiny star and the word Boston scrawled inside, weighed heavy in her pocket. Claire's words echoed in her mind. I saw her in a video, in Boston, last year. Hope and dread twisted in Sarah's gut. Was Emily still out there, trapped in a warehouse, her childhood stolen by the same criminals her father, James, had worked for? Or was this another cruel lie spun by men like Mike Sullivan, James's old Marine buddy, who'd ambushed them at the Monhegan dock? The van lurched, and Claire hissed in pain, her bound hands bumping Sarah's. They're taking us to South Boston, Claire whispered, her voice raw. That's where the warehouse is. I was tracking their operation before they grabbed me. Sarah's heart raced. You're sure Emily's there? She asked, her voice low, barely audible over the engine's drone. Claire nodded, her eyes glinting with determination. The video showed a girl, maybe 18, blonde, blue eyes, just like your daughter. She was different, hardened, but it was her. I know it. Sarah's chest tightened, tears stinging her eyes. 18. Emily would be 18 now, no longer the giggling 8-year-old who'd vanished on that cursed island. What had they done to her? She glanced at Ethan, his jaw clenched, his hands straining against the zip ties. We'll find her, she whispered, more to herself than to him. We have to. Ethan's eyes met hers, his voice a low growl. If they hurt her, I'll kill them. All of them. Sarah's heart ached at the rage in her son's voice. He was no killer, but the years of James's abuse bruises on her arms, scars on Ethan's back had forged a fire in him she couldn't extinguish. She leaned closer, her voice firm. Ethan, stay with me. We're getting Emily back, but you're not throwing your life away. Promise me. He didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the van's floor, his yellow sneakers still as stone. The van slowed, the engine's growl fading to a hum. Sarah's pulse quickened as the rear doors swung open, revealing a cavernous warehouse in South Boston's industrial sprawl. The air was heavy with the tang of oil and salt from the nearby harbor, the building's rusted walls looming like a fortress. Mike Sullivan stood outside, his gun glinting under a flickering streetlight, his smirk cold as ice. Welcome to the end of the line, he said, gesturing for his men to yank them out. Sarah stumbled as she was pulled from the van, her shoulder screaming in pain. Ethan lunged forward, trying to shield her, but a burly thug shoved him back, slamming him against the warehouse wall. Claire, her hands still bound, stood defiant, her eyes scanning the surroundings like a hawk. You're making a mistake, Sullivan, she said, her voice steady. The FBI's already on to you. Mike laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the empty lot. The FBI? You think they scare us? You're out of your depth, Dawson. Sarah's eyes darted around, taking in the warehouse's hulking silhouette, the stacks of crates, the faint hum of machinery inside. This was at the heart of the smuggling ring James had been tangled with, the place where Emily might be. She clutched the locket in her pocket, its weight grounding her. Where's my daughter? She demanded, her voice cutting through the night. You said she was valuable. Where is she? Mike's smile widened, his eyes glinting with malice. You'll see her soon enough. The boss wants to meet you first. They were herded inside, the warehouse's interior a maze of towering crates and flickering fluorescent lights. The air was stale, thick with the stench of grease and something sour, like fear. Sarah's heart pounded as they were led down a narrow corridor to a heavy steel door. Mike knocked twice, and the door swung open, revealing a man who made Sarah's blood run cold. He was tall, his suit impeccably tailored, his dark hair slicked back, his eyes like black ice. He exuded control, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. Mrs. Bennett, he said, his voice smooth, almost polite. I'm Victor. I've heard a lot about you. Sarah's throat tightened. Where's Emily? She asked, her voice trembling but defiant. Victor's smile was thin, predatory. Straight to the point. I like that. He gestured to a chair in the center of the room, its metal frame bolted to the floor. Sit, let's talk. Sarah didn't move, her eyes locked on his. I'm not here to talk. I want my daughter. Victor's laugh was low, chilling. Your daughter's been with us for 10 years. She's not the little girl you remember. She's useful now. Ethan surged forward, his zip ties snapping as he broke free, his fist aimed at Victor's face. But Mike was faster, tackling him to the ground, his gun pressed against Ethan's back. Try that again, kid, Mike growled, and you're dead. Sarah screamed, lunging toward Ethan, but Victor's men grabbed her, forcing her into the chair. Claire struggled beside her, her voice sharp. You're done, Victor. I've got evidence, videos, documents, names. The FBI's coming for you. Victor's eyes narrowed, but his smile didn't falter. Evidence? You mean the files you hid? We found those, Dawson. You're not as clever as you think. Sarah's heart sank, but she clung to the papers in her jacket, the manifest that named Emily. She had to keep him talking, had to find a way out. What did you do to her? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Why Boston? Why keep her alive? Victor leaned back, his fingers steepled. Your husband made a deal. 10 years ago, he owed us big. When Emily saw our operation on Monhegan, she became a problem. But problems can be assets. She was young, moldable. We trained her, shaped her. She's one of ours now. Sarah's vision blurred with tears, her mind reeling. Trained, shaped, her little girl, her Emily, turned into what? A criminal? A slave? She gripped the locket, her voice breaking. Where is she? I want to see her. Victor's smile widened, and he nodded to Mike. Bring her in. Hold. The door opened, and a young woman stepped into the room, her blonde hair tied back, her blue eyes cold and distant. Sarah's breath caught. The girl was 18, her face sharp and guarded, but those eyes, those were Emily's eyes, the same ones that had sparkled with laughter 10 years ago. Emily, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. It's me. It's Mom. The girl's expression didn't change. She stood beside Victor, her posture rigid, her voice flat. I don't know you. Huh? Sarah's heart shattered, but she pushed forward, her voice desperate. Emily, please. You wore this locket, with a star. We gave it to you for your 6th birthday. You loved it. You're my daughter. The girl's eyes flicked to the locket in Sarah's hand, a flicker of something recognition, crossing her face. But she shook her head, her voice cold. My name's Lily. I don't have a mother. Ethan struggled against Mike's grip, his voice raw. It's me. Ethan. We played on the beach, built sandcastles. You've got to remember. Victor laughed, his voice dripping with mockery. Don't waste your breath. Lily's been with us since she was 8. She's loyal, trained, perfect. You can't take her back. Sarah's chest heaved, rage and grief boiling inside her. You stole her, she spat, straining against her restraints. You turned her against us. She's my daughter. Victor's eyes glinted, and he leaned closer, his voice a low hiss. She's mine now. And you? You're a loose end. Before Sarah could respond, the warehouse shook with a deafening crash shouts, footsteps, the unmistakable crack of gunfire. Laura Hayes's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. FBI, drop your weapons. Victor cursed, drawing a gun from his suit, while Mike shoved Ethan to the floor. Sarah's eyes locked on Emily Lily, who stood frozen, her face unreadable. The room erupted into chaos, agents storming through the door, their flashlights cutting through the dim light. Sarah broke free of her chair, her shoulders screaming as she dove for Ethan, pulling him behind a crate. Stay down, she hissed, her heart pounding as bullets flew. She glanced at Lily, who hadn't moved, her eyes darting between Victor and the agents. Sarah's voice broke as she called out, Emily, come with us, please. Sighed. Lily's hand twitched, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw a spark of recognition. Then, in a blur of motion, Lily lunged at Victor, grabbing his gun and twisting it from his hand. The weapon clattered to the floor, and Victor roared, tackling her. Sarah screamed, scrambling forward, but an agent pulled her back, shouting, Stay clear. Lily fought like a wild animal, her movements precise, trained. She landed a kick to Victor's chest, sending him staggering, then grabbed the gun and aimed it at him. Her voice was cold, but her hand shook. You don't own me anymore. Victor's laugh was cut short by a gunshot not from Lily, but from Laura, who stood at the door, her weapon smoking. Victor collapsed, clutching his leg, his face twisted in pain. Cuff him. Laura shouted, and agents swarmed, pinning Victor to the ground. Sarah rushed to Lily, her hands trembling as she reached for her daughter. Emily, it's okay. You're safe now. Lily's eyes met hers, and for a moment, Sarah saw the little girl she'd lost. But then Lily stepped back, her voice low. I can't go with you. I don't belong there anymore. Sarah's heart broke, but before she could speak, Lily turned and ran, disappearing into the maze of crates. Sarah screamed her name, lunging after her, but Ethan grabbed her, his voice raw. "Mom, let her go. We'll find her again, I promise." Laura approached, her face grim. "We've got Victor and his men. We found a USB in his office videos, records, names. It confirms what Claire told you. Emily was here, trained as part of their operation. We'll keep looking for her." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. She clutched the locket, the papers still safe in her jacket. The manifests, the note about Boston, they were proof, a trail to follow. But Emily's rejection cut deeper than any bullet. Her daughter was alive, but lost to her in a way she hadn't imagined. As the agents cleared the warehouse, Sarah and Ethan were led outside, the night air cold against their skin. Claire, her wounds bandaged, joined them, her voice steady despite her pain. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I thought I could save her." Sarah shook her head, her voice firm. "You gave me hope, Claire. That's enough for now." Ethan's hand found hers, his yellow sneakers scuffed and dirty. "We'll find her, Mom, no matter what." Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the warehouse's dark silhouette. Emily was out there, somewhere, and Sarah would never stop searching. But as the agents loaded Victor into a van, a new sound stopped her coldophone buzzing in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart racing. It was her phone, the one she'd lost on Monhegan. The screen showed a text from an unknown number. "Stop looking. She's gone." Sarah's blood ran cold, her fingers trembling as she clutched the phone. The warehouse loomed behind her, its shadows hiding secrets she wasn't ready to face. Emily was alive, but for how long? And who was watching them now? Part 6. Light and Shadow. The autumn wind howled through Augusta, Maine, rattling the windows of Sarah Bennett's new home, a modest one-story ranch house on a quiet street, far from the ghosts of Portland and Monhegan Island. Sarah stood at the kitchen counter, her hands trembling as she clutched a faded envelope, its edges worn from years of hiding. The postmark was smudged, dated 2 weeks ago, with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting shaky but unmistakable. "Mom, I can't come back, but I know you tried. I love you. Emily." Sarah's heart twisted, a familiar ache that had haunted her for 10 years. Her daughter, now 18, was alive somewhere but had chosen to run, to vanish into the shadows of Boston's underbelly after the chaos in that South Boston warehouse. The memory of Emily's cold blue eyes, her flat voice saying, "I don't know you," cut deeper than the bullet wound in Sarah's shoulder, now a faint scar beneath her sweater. She set the letter down, her fingers brushing the star-engraved locket that hung around her neck, a relic of the daughter she'd lost and found, only to lose again. The kitchen was small, cluttered with unpacked boxes, a testament to the fresh start she and Ethan were trying to build. Ethan, her 20-year-old son, was at community college now, studying law with a fire in his eyes that both scared and inspired her. He'd vowed to fight human trafficking, to find Emily, no matter how long it took. But the weight of their past James's betrayal, the smuggling ring, the scars on Ethan's back from years of abuse hung over them like a storm cloud. Sarah's phone buzzed on the counter, snapping her out of her thoughts. A text from Detective Laura Hayes. "Got a lead on a girl in New York. Might be Emily. Call me." Sarah's breath caught, hope flickering like a candle in a gale. She'd heard leads like this before, dozens over the years, each one a dead end. But this time felt different, heavier, as if the truth was finally within reach. She glanced out the window, where dusk painted the sky in bruised purples and grays. The backyard was small, bordered by a sagging wooden fence, and in the fading light, she noticed something odd: a dead sparrow lying on the grass, its wings crumpled like a warning. The sight sent a chill down her spine, a grim echo of the dead birds she'd seen on Monhegan Island, in the alley in Portland, in her nightmares. A symbol, maybe, of the death and loss that followed her family like a curse. "Mom?" Ethan's voice broke the silence as he stepped into the kitchen, his yellow sneakers scuffed but still bright, a reminder of the boy who'd risked everything to save her. He carried a backpack, his face tired but determined. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Ugh." Sarah forced a smile, tucking the letter into her pocket. "Just thinking," she said, her voice soft. "Laura texted. She's got a lead in New York. Could be Emily." Ethan's eyes lit up, but his jaw tightened, a mix of hope and caution. "New York? That's what, a 6-hour drive? We should go. Now." Sarah shook her head, her hand resting on his arm. "Not yet, Ethan. We need to let Laura do her job. We've chased too many false hopes. I can't lose you to this too." Frightened, Ethan's face hardened, his voice low. "I'm not giving up, Mom. She's out there. I know it. After everything, Dad, that warehouse, Victor, she's still fighting. Like us." Sarah's chest ached, pride and fear warring inside her. She thought of James, now serving a life sentence in a Massachusetts prison for his role in the smuggling ring and Emily's abduction. The trial had been a blur of pain. Ethan's testimony about years of abuse, the scars on his back bared to a courtroom, the manifest Sarah had found proving James had sold their daughter to cover his debts. Victor, the slick-suited kingpin, was behind bars too, but his network was vast, its tendrils stretching beyond Boston. Emily Lily, as she'd called herself, had slipped through their fingers, a ghost in a city of millions. "I know," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "We'll find her, Ethan, together. But we need to be smart. No more running into danger." Ethan nodded, but his eyes were distant, haunted. "I keep seeing her, Mom. In that warehouse, looking at me like I was a stranger. I should have grabbed her, made her come with us." Sarah pulled him into a hug, her shoulder aching but her grip fierce. "You did everything you could. We both did. She's alive, Ethan. That's what matters. We'll bring her home." The doorbell rang, sharp and jarring in the quiet house. Sarah frowned, glancing at Ethan. "You expecting anyone?" He shook his head, his hand slipping into his pocket, where Sarah knew he kept the knife he'd carried since Monhegan. They moved to the door together, Sarah's heart pounding as she peered through the peephole. Laura Hayes stood on the porch, her navy blazer wrinkled, her face grim but urgent. Sarah opened the door, her voice tight. "Laura, what's going on?" "The lead in New York." Laura stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room as if expecting trouble. "Yeah, but it's more than that. Can we talk privately?" Ethan crossed his arms, his yellow sneakers planted firmly. "Anything you say to her, you say to me. I'm in this." Laura sighed, nodding. "All right." The lead Salida girl matching Emily's description was spotted in a shelter in Brooklyn. Blonde, blue eyes, about 18. She's going by Lily, but the shelter staff say she's skittish, won't talk about her past. The FBI's moving in, but there's a problem. Sarah's heart skipped. "What problem?" Laura's voice lowered, her eyes dark. "Victor's people. They're still active, even with him in prison. We think they're watching the shelter, maybe trying to grab her before we can. And there's something else." She pulled a small evidence bag from her pocket, holding up a folded piece of paper. "This was left at my precinct this morning. No prints, no cinder. It's addressed to you." Sarah's hands trembled as she took the bag, opening it to reveal a note in the same shaky handwriting as the letter in her pocket. "Stop looking, or she dies." Her blood ran cold, the words blurring as her vision swam. "They know we're close," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ethan grabbed the note, his face paling. "They're bluffing. They have to be. Emily's out there, and we're not stopping." "Inch." Laura's hand rested on Sarah's shoulder, her voice steady but urgent. "We're not giving up, but you need to be careful. These people don't play games. I've got a team heading to Brooklyn tomorrow. I want you both to stay here, lay low." Sarah's jaw tightened, her fingers clutching the locket. "I'm not sitting this out, Laura. That's my daughter." Laura's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "I get it, Sarah, but if you go charging in, you could get her killed. Let us handle this. I promise, I'll call you the second we have her." Sarah hesitated, the weight of 10 years pressing down on her. She'd lost Emily once, failed to protect her from James, from Victor, from a world that chewed up innocence and spit out pain. She couldn't fail again. But Laura was right, rushing in could cost everything. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Okay, but you bring her back, Laura. You bring my girl home. Laura nodded, her face resolute. I will. Stay safe, both of you. She turned to leave, but paused at the door, her voice low. And Sarah, watch your back. That note means someone's close. The door closed, leaving Sarah and Ethan in the quiet kitchen, the letter and the note lying side by side on the counter like twin accusations. Sarah's eyes drifted to the window, where the dead sparrow still lay in the grass, its lifeless form a stark reminder of the danger that followed them. She shivered, the air suddenly colder, heavier, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Mom, Ethan said, his voice soft but firm. We're going to find her, no matter what those bastards say. Sarah met his gaze, seeing the boy who'd built sandcastles with his sister, now a young man forged in pain and purpose. I know, she said, her voice steadied despite the fear gnawing at her. We'll never stop. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table, the letter from Emily opened before her, its words searing into her heart. The locket hung heavy around her neck, its star engraving catching the dim light. She traced the words I love you and let herself hope, just for a moment, that Emily meant them, that somewhere in that hardened girl was the daughter she'd lost. A soft creak broke the silence, and Sarah froze, her hand slipping to the knife block on the counter. The sound came again, not from the house, but outside, a faint whisper, like a voice carried on the wind. Mom, it said, soft and fleeting, like a memory. Sarah's heart stopped. She stood, her chair scraping the floor, and moved to the back door, her hand trembling on the knob. The yard was dark, the dead sparrow gone, swept away by the wind or some unseen hand. She opened the door, the cold air rushing in, and strained to hear the voice again. Nothing. Just the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of a car. But as she turned to go back inside, her eyes caught something in the grass, a small, silver object glinting in the moonlight. A star-shaped charm, identical to the one on Emily's locket. Sarah's breath caught, her fingers closing around the charm. Was it Emily's? Had she been here, watching, leaving a sign, or was it a trap, another taunt from Victor's people? She clutched the charm, her heart pounding, and stepped back inside, locking the door behind her. The house felt smaller, the shadows deeper, as if the walls themselves were closing in. The next morning, Ethan found her at the table, the charm and letter beside her. What's that? He asked, his voice sharp, his eyes flicking to the window. Sarah held up the charm, her voice trembling. I found it outside. It's like Emily's. I heard something last night. A voice. Ethan's face paled, but he took the charm, turning it over in his hand. We need to tell Laura, if she was here, or if they're watching us. Sarah cut in, her voice low. That note said to stop looking. This could be a warning. Ethan's jaw clenched, his yellow sneakers scuffing the floor. Let them come. I'm not afraid anymore. Hem. Sarah reached for his hand, her voice firm. We're stronger than them, Ethan. We've survived James, Victor, everything. We'll survive this. He nodded, his eyes fierce. For Emily. Evaluation and real-world lessons. The story of Sarah and Ethan Bennett mirrors the grim reality of human trafficking and familial abuse, issues that plague communities across America. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, over 400,000 children go missing each year in the United States, some falling into the hands of traffickers. Dr. Anna Carter, a psychologist specializing in trauma, notes, cases like the Bennetts highlight the resilience of survivors, but also the devastating impact of unchecked abuse. Victims like Ethan often suffer in silence, fearing retaliation or disbelief. The narrative underscores the importance of vigilance, watching for signs of abuse in loved ones, such as unexplained injuries or behavioral changes. Families of missing persons should contact resources like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST. The story also warns of the dangers of untreated PTSD and addiction in veterans like James, urging communities to provide better mental health support. Sarah's relentless hope, despite crushing loss, reminds us that perseverance can light the way through even the darkest shadows. Yet the chilling charm in the grass, the whispered voice in the night, serve as a stark reminder. Some truths remain just out of reach, lurking in the dark.